Well, today I'm going to talk about the rise in feminine consciousness and about the fact that this is happening on the planet and that it needs to happen because it's obvious that we're in times of great change and unrest, and it's obvious that things have gone well out of control. And in fact, what's been happening recently with this pandemic thing, it's stopped the world in its tracks and it's given us time for reflection. Now, not everybody realizes that. Some people will have used the opportunity to find a deeper meaning, a sort of spiritual meaning behind what's happening. Others have been upset and confused by it and they don't know what to make of it. Well, really, with reflection, it's wondering, why have we come to a point where on the planet we've allowed something like this to emerge, that we're affected the way we are? And if we look deeper, there are patterns that are changing our human consciousness, pushing us to be more aware of how we're living on the planet and to see that we need to change to stop the problems, the cruelty, the sense of heartlessness that is there towards many things. And the energy of the world at the moment is very much about the people who are dominant. And quite often that might be big business. It might be an attitude that you have to be very competitive, that you have to have the edge, you have to be the winner. That so long as you are the most skillful one to be a manipulator, or you're the best at playing people or telling lies or whatever, so long as you come out the winner, that everything is okay. And that is the way that the world works to a large extent. And in a sense, we've bought into it, but we're controlled by it. And we know that on a daily basis, we go to work and people try and live a decent life. But around us, we are surrounded by this attitude of competitiveness. And it's like a belief system. It's a consciousness that exists. And for that to change, people need to be aware of it, and they need to know that they can change it. And this is where we need the feminine energies to come in, to be more present, to help to consider how we nurture and care for ourselves and for the planet. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was drawn to the Divine Plan healing system, because there is a much broader perspective in it, as well as being a healing system. And it works on a fifth dimensional level, which is the highest level of a place of unconditional love, where you're looking at the higher perspective of how things are working in someone's life, or just in general. And in particular, it's about supporting women, because one of the ways that we're unbalanced on the planet is that women, their energy is being suppressed for generations, for hundreds of years. And it's just stopped the natural development of the world. And if we think about our mothers, our grandmothers, going back down our ancestral line, many of those women, they just survived as best they could. There were lots of things they couldn't do. You know, they were told they couldn't go out to work, or they couldn't have power or control over something. It's the way things evolved. And it's affected everything. It's become like an accepted belief system. And it's been accepted for so long, we don't know any different. And to change that is to change a belief system, is to change your consciousness of it, and to alter that so we can move on. And for women, in many cases, women have ended up not feeling safe in the world. Our sense of security maybe has been affected. Women's ability to be out there strong in the world has been affected. The value of women has been affected in the world. And in many ways, in some places, even still today, women have been devalued. They have been disrespected. They have been crushed down. And similar to what's been done to the planet in general, to Mother Earth, that supreme energy that we live on. And many women have been used as a support system, but their status hasn't been acknowledged. And because of that, a lot of women are holding themselves in. And in order for women to start to have a voice, they need to be aware of the fact that they have a voice, that they can move forward. And at this point, the energy of the world, we're being forced to confront this. It's just a natural evolution. And at the moment, there's a lot of protest in the world as well. So it's time for many people to start to use their voice. And some people are They're protesting, they're shouting, they're destroying things because it's the only way they feel they can be heard. And for other people, they're looking for a more spiritual meaning. There's different ways. But it is time for us to start to listen more clearly to what everybody is saying. And if we're going to progress as a planet, it's a bit like the universe has a natural flow, a natural balance. And there's a lot of give and take, and it's just a natural way that things move and evolve, and one thing flows into another. And the universe is just moving on. And then there's us on the planet, there's us stuck. And we're like a little toddler, we're like a child that's decided to throw a tantrum. So they plonk down on the floor and they throw a tantrum. And the universe is like this big patient being saying, okay, come on, right, you've had your time. It's time you grow up now. It's time you stood up and grow up and face the reality of what you're doing on the planet. And in many places in the world, we have cruelty, we have wars, we have suppression of people, we have destruction of the planet, animals, everything is being destroyed because we're not living in balance or harmony. And a lot of this is because we're working too much from our head, from the so-called logic of the head that says to be the winner, you have to be the strongest, the best, the one who's dominant, who takes control. Whereas in fact, there's another way of looking at it. There's a different, more subtle energy, which is what I'm calling a more feminine energy. Both energies are needed. Both masculine and feminine energies are needed. And there's a very powerful need now to bring ourselves into alignment, to start to move towards a more balanced acceptance of people. And it's time for the small voices to be heard, all of the people who were not listened to. And this has been like a spiral that's been happening for quite a while. So 100 years ago, there were women fighting, the suffragettes fighting for the vote and for women's rights. Then we had the feminist movement that came up in the 60s and 70s. And each time people were asking to be heard and maybe put down and denied. And now it's coming back again. And this is a natural progression. And we're looking at how we align ourselves to being a more kind type of society, to look at the beauty of the world, to think that, well, if I'm the winner and I achieve and I'm fine, but how are other people impacted? And it's not that we shouldn't be strong in the world. It's not that. It's that it's considering the impact on everything around us. And in that way, there's a natural flow and a natural balance and exchange. And the feminine energy it's not about being all fluffy and giving everybody a hug, which is what a lot of people have this attitude about. It's about being strong. It's about that any man or any woman or any child, anybody can be fully themselves in the world, can get out there and just not have to worry about being denied a status, of being sneered at because of what they're said, anything like that. And this is needed now because we are in such a state of imbalance. We know we have pollution. We know we have pockets of the world where there's most awful things happening, where a lot of people are feeling powerless. And it's because we're going so far out of balance. And this is not a criticism of women or of men or anything like that. It's not meant as that. But because women's energy has been held back for so long, women are not being the proper force in the world. They're being held back. And because of that, many of the men have been forced to go out, and the male energy is naturally sort of more dominant, maybe more energy driven. It's different in that way. And we're trying to get things in balance so that one does not affect the other as much. And we do need sort of a guide when we are walking forward to try and help us to see these energies, to think about the way the balance is on the planet, and to come into our hearts and to act without heartlessness that seems to be happening in many places today. And there's a spotlight on this. So we're starting to attune to this, to align to it, and to realize that this is what's coming up for us, to try and think about a different perspective. And divine plan healing is about the bigger picture. It's not religious based at all, but it's this bigger picture of the divine plan is the universal energy, basically, that just progresses and evolves and flows. And each being has a place in the divine plan. And if certain beings, whether they're human or animal, wherever they are stopped from being natural and evolving, everything's affected. You don't bring the best out into the world that you're supposed to do, and everybody loses out on that. So by healing individually, we're helping ourselves, we radiate out to the people around us. And we're also trying to change the consciousness of the world that there's a different way to do things. And in this way, in particular, by focusing on the feminine energies and supporting women in that aspect, it's one way of helping to get things back into balance in the planet. There are other ways, obviously, but this is one way that it focuses on. And if you consider that half the population of the planet, approximately, are female, and if all of them are affected in some ways by being held back, by not being who they're supposed to be, then we have a bit of a problem, because potential is not being reached. And who in their family would like to think that that one person was held back, that that person was not being given a voice and not being heard? Who would like to think that one person was losing out because everybody else was taking control and able to push themselves forward? We wouldn't like to think that individually in our own life or our family. But in fact, that's what's happening on the planet. There are many people who are being held back, and maybe because as a consciousness, we need just to change the way we think about things. So the rise of the feminine consciousness and the feminine energies would be a very, very important part of helping us to progress in the world. Thank you.